We reject it with the content it deserves.
We reject you.
It's not worth the paper it was printed on.
Are we on the cusp of a coalition change-up? The Democratic Alliance refused to vote through the national budget after testy internal negotiations with the African National Congress. Instead, the ANC looked to smaller opposition parties outside of the government of national unity, like Action SA, to make a 0.5% value-added tax increase a reality. Now the DA wants to interdict that from happening on Workers' Day, but does it leave the Blue Party out in the political cold? We gauge all of this with our News 24 political editor, Andisiwe Makinana, next.
Now, the big thing is there were many absent MPs. If people noticed, the MKP had 13 MPs that did not show up yesterday. Had they been there, the other side would have won.
And later in the show, Trump throws tariffs at the world, including South Africa.
And they've got some bad things going on in South Africa,
And yet another Mzansi artist gets recognized, this time by the Rocket Man himself. Well, to stay tuned to The Lead for every single edition, please hit the follow button on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. My name's Graham Robenheimer. Let's chat all this and more right here on The Lead on News 24. Today, the ANC believes that the DA and no one else will be solely responsible for the party's possible departure from the government of national unity. As the DA senior leaders meet to discuss their next move, News 24's political editor Andisiwe Makinana joins me now in our Cape Town studios to help us make sense of all of this. Hi Andisiwe, welcome to The Lead. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me on your show. I am exhausted from all the news that have been unfolding in our country over the past few days, over the budget, the GNU, and the negotiations.
I just want to update our listeners very quickly. DA Federal Council Chairperson Helen Zille, she was just on the steps of the Western Cape High Court, and she told reporters, including News 24 journalists gathered there, that the DA is now officially going to be interdicting the Finance Minister's projected 0.5% VAT increase for the 1st of May, a la Workers' Day. The irony of that is not lost on us. And so that the party's gone ahead with that. But Zille, and just to update everybody, has also indicated to reporters that they're not making any sudden movements in regards to their current positioning within the government of national unity. I just thought we'd begin with the very latest there. Just your quick reaction, Andisiwe, to that.
Okay, yeah, I'll answer your question in two parts. One is the challenge that the DA is taking to the court. If you followed yesterday's events in Parliament, quite dramatic at the beginning with the political parties that are objecting to the budget, trying to get the Speaker of the National Assembly not to allow that session to proceed on the basis that they were all arguing the process that led to yesterday's sitting was flawed. So the process, we know it has been with the Standing Committee on Finance, and in that process, where especially the day before yesterday, we saw Action SA making recommendations, and now there's been an argument whether those are recommendations or they were actual amendments. Action seems to think that they made amendments, while everyone says, no, not so quick. Those were just recommendations. They are not amendments. So the feeling is the committee had failed to actually come out with a stand clear line to say, as a committee, we reject or we accept the budget as presented by the minister. So on that basis, your DA, your EFF, your MK party were saying we cannot proceed because the process had been flawed. So I understand that that is the basis of the DA's challenge in the court to say we cannot accept this whole thing that happened yesterday on the basis that the process leading to yesterday was not legal, one, but it was procedurally fraud. That's one part. The second part is we all know all eyes are on the DA. What is the next step? The ANC said you cannot oppose a budget and expect to still serve in this government. How do you implement programs of a government whose budget you do not support? So we are all watching to see what is the DA's next step.
Excellently put and so concise. And of course, just to reiterate, the DA Federal Council chairperson Helen Zille saying that they're not going to make any sort of sudden movements. They don't want to jump to any sort of conclusions regarding their future positioning within the Government of National Unity as it stands. Let's quickly dial back to the proceedings in Parliament, your playground for many years as a political correspondent, Andisiwe. Let's go through the numbers. The ANC didn't think that they possibly could have gotten all the numbers, or at least we in the media thought they couldn't get all the numbers that they wanted to pass through the national budget, but yet they had found the numbers with, of course, Action SA, Good, the Patriotic Alliance, and the IFP. It came down to quite a narrow margin in terms of the final vote tally, right?
It was actually a 12-vote difference at the end of the day, with the supporting parties getting 194 votes and those in opposition getting only 182. So it was quite close. I think it was the closest vote in Parliament in the past 30 years. Big thing is, it's not that technical, but the important thing that those that oppose the budget should have done is make sure that every member of their party was present. So the more people you had, the higher the threshold would have been for the ANC. So that discussion they had yesterday, you needed first of all a quorum of 134 MPs to be present in the House for voting to take place. The House was quite full, so you could see that you had a quorum. And according to the Constitution and the rules, a half of the present MPs plus one must vote in support of the question for it to go through. So if you have more MPs, it's more difficult for the ANC and those that support the budget to have it going through. Now, the big thing is there were many absent MPs. If people noticed, the MKP had 13 MPs that did not show up yesterday. Had they been there, the other side would have won. The problem goes back to the infighting in the MK party, where we saw a whole lot of MPs being expelled from the party, being removed from Parliament. And during that process, they it's a long story with parties submitting names to Parliament and so on. So at some point, they ran out of the people that they can send to Parliament. So as they sit, they've got 10 vacancies that they cannot fill until a certain time after June this year.
So those 10 seats could have ideally been the deal breaker for the DA, right? They could have been.
They could have been. And then they got 3 people that were apparently sick or they were not present for some reason. So I think with experience, the MK party could have changed the direction of what we saw yesterday. They are a new party in Parliament. It's very important to understand these things. Parliament is not about the rhetoric. It's not about the noise that people see. There's a whole lot of rules that you must understand, processes, procedures, and I think that cost the other side at the end of the day.
Sure, absolutely. I really did not know that. Let's quickly go into the... Let's delve within from Parliament into the Government of National Unity and the deliberations between the various party policies and the sticking points. So on one hand, in my mind, it seems it's about getting through a budget so that the money is allocated and so then service delivery can happen. That's basically singing from the ANC hymn sheet. And then on the other hand, for the DA, it's been about all the various other things, of course, NHI, Bella, etc., etc., etc. And it's certainly been about affecting more of that party's policies, having a bigger say within the GNU, and then ultimately saying no to VAT taxes. So really, it's been this tug of war, blame game essentially between the ANC and the DA that threatens the stability of the current GNU and how we view it. Is that kind of, conceptualizing it all in a nutshell?
Yeah, you are correct, because that's how it has been for the past 30 years. So now it again goes back to what happened on the 29th of May 2024 with the ANC not getting a majority in those elections. So for 30 years, they've enjoyed a majority, would even say an overwhelming majority, where they can vote on anything in Parliament without necessarily needing the other parties to vote with them. This time around, for the first time, they don't have a majority. For them to pass anything in Parliament, they need other parties to vote with them. Now, that has forced us, or has forced the ANC and our Parliament to do things differently. The ANC presented a budget all these years, and whether South Africans opposed it or supported it, but I mean, in most cases, people have always opposed the budgets. People have always raised their own submissions, made their own suggestions. But at the end of the day, the ANC will just ignore all of that. They've got the numbers in Parliament. They will push it through and it will pass. This time around, they don't have the numbers to pass it, so they have to negotiate. They were forced to negotiate with their partners in the GNU, and their partners were not budging. They were saying, in this day and time with such a high cost of living affecting just about everybody, not just the unemployed or the poor masses. It doesn't matter if you're middle class, we are all affected by the high cost of living. How do you justify a VAT increase? So they couldn't find each other over such things. They had to look outside the GNU. Even there, it wasn't easy. So the ANC being forced to get support outside its own structures to pass this thing has been a game changer. It has seen Parliament having to go and invoke processes that have always been there, by the way, because it has been law since 2009 for Parliament committees to make changes to the budget. That has never been done until now, because they just felt there was no need. You know, we've got the numbers, we can do whatever we want. So now they had been forced to go. So it is not a bad thing that it is happening. It's actually, it's good for democracy. And I think in the 31 years of democracy, we have never discussed the budget in the manner we have done it this time around. It's been the topic of discussion since February. How many weeks is that? Every day. Almost every day we have been discussing budget. So I think it's a good thing for our democracy. It's also not a bad thing for South Africa, because you will remember only late last year, the German government collapsed over the coalition parties not agreeing on economic policies, not agreeing on budgets. That is an old democracy. That is a developed country. So these conversations do take place. It is not the end of the world. You just have to manage them. With us, it's new. We are a young democracy. And I think we are a growing democracy. We do have to go through these things. I hope we will find each other. We've got very solid laws. The Public Finance Management Act does make provision for the country to continue delivering services, paying salaries, even if the budget is not passed. So we are not in a crisis. But we are, I think, maturing much faster than our age. It is definitely not bad for democracy.
Fantastic. And it's definitely the way that we have to look at it, right? A healthy political discourse, and as you say, maturing. We're slowly getting there. Just very quickly about the German example, which I very much loved. The other side of that coin is that Zille herself claimed that because the ANC had to go outside of the GNU to get the political support it wanted to pass the budget, for the DA's view and her view, that was unnecessary and that's unheard of globally in coalition terms. Do you buy that?
Well, it sounds like the statement of intent that they signed when they started this relationship in June last year says they must speak to each other and they must try to find consensus. But now you ask yourself, if they could not find each other, they have been having these talks for weeks and weeks and weeks now. I don't know what then was the ANC supposed to do if they felt the demands were unreasonable. We were not part, and I also want to address the fact that the negotiations were done secretly or in private, because it also takes us down a path that I shouldn't encourage. You know, South Africa has a history of being transparent with our budget processes, and we also have been winning awards internationally for our transparent processes. Now, all of a sudden, we have these negotiations that no one is telling us. We hear snippets here and there. They contradict each other. We don't know what their demands are, because no one has come out, public and say, as the DA, we believe A, B, C, D. So from the bits and pieces that we get, we hear that the DA wanted the NYDA to be abolished, we hear things like they wanted their deputy minister to chair some committee. So it sounds like these things are not relevant to the budget negotiations, but now we are only hearing one side of the story. We don't know how true these things are. Then it becomes a problem as well. And also, if those things and those demands are true, then it means something went wrong somewhere, and you wouldn't blame the ANC for not coming to the party. Although at the same time, if you are going to work as in a partnership, you should be able to accommodate. You should be able to see the bigger picture as leaders, because at the end of the day, whatever you do affects the people on the ground.
Absolutely, and that sort of echoes what Carol Payton, our specialist writer at large, was saying in yesterday's episode. It's pretty much the same sort of sentiment. But all ANC senior leaders are now saying that the DA's brought its own long rope to thus hang itself at the end of the day. All the ANC senior leaders are basically saying that at the moment, that it would be the DA's undoing if it would to exit the GNU. We haven't really actually heard a lot from the DA's senior leaders, because they're going to be meeting today and then, updating us all in the media as to what their next steps would be. Zilla says they don't want to move too much, they don't want to make any big deliberations, but of course she herself has to listen to everybody else in the party too.
Yeah, but we should also be worried. These are politicians. And again, it goes back to the whole issue of this being done in private, because we don't know what was why we are at a point now where we are told the DA is hanging itself. What exactly is that the DA wouldn't budge on, or what the DA wanted so badly that the ANC couldn't budge on? So I think we just have to play it by the ear. We just have to be careful on what is being said. But yes, it does seem like the ANC has reached a point where it feels it cannot continue working with the DA. But it's important for us as journalists and the public to establish what exactly happened behind the scenes. And I think it would be advisable for the DA to tell us their side of the story.
And then, just to go back to your opening remarks, the action essay's sort of wild turn of them coming into the fore and saying, we will help the ANC to push the budget through, but, we're going to put in this little paragraph into our report to say, possibly down the line, the VAT increase may be something that shouldn't be implemented a second time, or like, Fikile Mbalula, the ANC Secretary General, saying it's not always going to be a permanent thing. That really muddied a lot of the waters, because the action essay is a DA breakaway party.
Correct, you're correct. It muddied the waters, which is uncharted waters in any case. So it's all new for all of us, because as much as the framework was there, no one has taken this road. So I think we are also, and to some extent, you can't fault them, because it's all new for all of us. And when I listened to the debate yesterday, I think people were learning as the process was unfolding. So it's going to help that others have gone to court, because I think by the end of the court process, there's a lot to learn for all of us in terms of processes, in terms of how do they address these issues going forward.
Let's end off here, because I want to really speak to finally this last point, and that's political party manifestos, right? We know more or less that the MKP is, a very traditionalist African conservative party, so to speak, although some of their policies on paper veer in funny directions, or let me say peculiar directions. And whereas the EFF, we've been able to ventilate their policies for a really long time because they've been around longer. What does their iteration of look like within a GNU context? What concessions could they possibly pursue or push for if they were partners with the ANC in a GNU configuration? Let's start with the EFF.
Well, we know EFF is about land. Land expropriation without compensation. The EFF, if you remember, did not necessarily did not support the Expropriation Act that has got everyone hot under the collar, because they feel it does not address their call for all land belonging to the state. So that's going to be a big deal. We know that the ANC tried to do this in Parliament when they wanted to change the constitution. It didn't pass. The EFF wouldn't support the ANC because they feel the ANC doesn't go far enough. And what the EFF is proposing is very much close to, I have to choose my words carefully. I don't want to say to what happened in Zimbabwe, but the EFF is all about the state being the custodian of all the land in South Africa, which the ANC said, no way, we still need to protect your property rights of individual South Africans. So I think that will be a key issue that they will not find each other on.
And MKP, what would be the sticking concessions there?
The MKP is not supportive of the constitution that we have in South Africa.
Yes, they want a referendum, right?
They want a referendum. They think this constitution is white, is drafted in London. So there's just no way that they would be able to cooperate, because for all its faults, the ANC still comes back to the constitution. So I just don't see the MKP working with the ANC. That would not last a day, that kind of partnership. Actually, even in the talks that we keep hearing about, I don't hear much of the talks between the two. I mean, the MK party was formed to remove Cyril Ramaphosa. President Jacob Zuma doesn't make,
any bones about that. Yeah.
The MK party was formed to. So I just do not see that happening. Having said that, I just do not think they would have the numbers, though, without the MK party. If the ANC goes with the EFF, I think they will need every other political party on their side. And I think there is something they called a minority government. So they will be the biggest party, but without the majority. And I don't think they'll be able to pass anything with those numbers.
Yeah, because then that starts becoming very, very complex. The budget is not perhaps the best example to illuminate the ANC getting all these other players into the fold, because we're now going into other policy realms that would change the complexity completely, right?
Certainly. I was saying to my colleague yesterday, we can at least count the occasions over the past 8-9 months where the ANC and the DA differed. We'll talk about BEDA, NHI, expropriation, maybe our foreign policy, and now the budget, 5 occasions. With the other parties, there are so many differences. I promise you, every day they will be fighting over something, literally, because they differ so much on so many things.
And your diary will be completely full up.
Day and night.
Andisiwe Makinana, I really do appreciate it, our political editor here at News 24. I really appreciate your time. And finally, we get to have our proper broadcast discussion. I know back in journalism school, you were saying just before our chat, you loved broadcasting, but you steered a little bit to print?
That is correct. I actually was very good broadcast student, but I really wanted to be a writer. So I went with print instead of coming your side.
I think that ended up very well for you, because your exclusives speak for themselves.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for chatting to us on The Lead.
Okay.
To our trending topic now, and US President Donald Trump's brought sweeping tariffs against many more countries, including South Africa. Trump's minimum tariff for all US imports is 10%, but South Africa is one of 60 nations that now face a heftier tariff rate of 31%. We understand that many of our biggest exports, including platinum, gold, and wood products, are exempted from this rate, but local agriculture output, the automotive industry, and others are not. That's alarming enough for Pretoria, when at least 4% of all of our farming good exports went to the US last year. South Africa is the largest producer of macadamia nuts in the world, and soon this will be a pricey snack for the average American. Gone too are the duty-free benefits the South African vehicle manufacturing sector enjoyed under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA. The SA presidency says it's concerned, calling Trump's tariffs a trade barrier for shared prosperity. Meanwhile, Trump addressed reporters gathered in the White House Rose Garden.
South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. You know, we're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it.
These tariffs will be felt from as early as this weekend. And finally, yet another up-and-coming Mzansi artist has received the global music nod of approval. The so-called future ghetto funk star, Moonchild Sanelly, has come in for major praise from the rocket man himself, Elton John. The singing legend had Moonchild on his Rocket Hour podcast recently, describing her album Full Moon as, quote, one of the best things I've heard in years. He also admired her infectious energy, saying the world needed more of that right now. Moonchild told News 24's Joel Ontong that to be commended by Elton John just shows that she's on the right track in her career. Moonchild Sanelly, who weaves R&B, soul, funk and amapiano genres into her style of music, is especially popular overseas, where she's currently on a tour of Europe. Catch the full story under our arts and entertainment section. From coalition uncertainty to Moonchild's rocketing career. That's been our show. We want your feedback, so please mail us your comments and voice notes to thelead@24.com. That's to be included in our next edition. You can also subscribe by following us on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Daily episodes are dropping on News 24, Spotify and Apple Monday to Thursday at around 7 p.m. My name's Graham Robenheimer, and so long as there's news, we'll have the lead.